Hello, everybody. This is Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. Part 2, Chapter 1. Towards the close of the winter, the Sherbatskys held a consultation of physicians in regard to Kitty's health. She was ill, and the approach of spring only increased her ailment. The family doctor had ordered cod liver oil, then iron, and last of all nitrate of silver, but as none of these remedies did any good, he advised them to take her abroad. It was then resolved to consult a celebrated specialist. This celebrity, still a young man and very neat in his personal appearance, insisted on a careful investigation of the trouble. And as all the other doctors who belonged to the same school, studied the same books, and consequently held the same ideas, had decided that this specialist possessed the necessary skill to save Kitty, his request was granted. After a careful examination and a prolonged use of the stethoscope on the lungs of the poor trembling girl, the celebrated physician carefully washed his hands and returned to the drawing-room. The prince, with a little cough, listened to what he had to say and frowned. He himself had never been sick, and he had no faith in doctors. Moreover, he was a man of common sense, and was all the more angry at this comedy, because possibly he alone understood what ailed his daughter. A regular humbug, thought the old prince, and mentally applied to the celebrated doctor a hunting expression which signifies a man who has not had any luck, but comes home with large stories. The latter, on his side, with difficulty stooping to the low level of this old gentleman's intelligence, barely disguised his disdain. It scarcely seemed to him necessary to speak to the poor old man, since, in his eyes, the head of the house was the princess. He was ready to pour out before her all the floods of his eloquence, and as she came in at this moment with the family doctor, the old prince left the room, so as not to show too clearly what he thought about it all. The princess was troubled, and did not know what course to take. She felt a little guilty in regard to Kitty. "No, doctor, decide upon our fate. Tell me all," she wanted to say. "Is there any hope?" But her lips trembled, and she hesitated. Tell us." "I shall be at your service, princess, after I have conferred with my colleague. We shall then have the honor of giving you our opinion. Do you wish to be alone?" "Just as you please." The princess sighed and left the room. The family doctor timidly expressed his opinion about her condition, and gave his reasons for thinking that it was the beginning of a tubercular disease because, etc. The celebrated physician listened, and in the midst of his diagnosis took out his great gold watch. "Yes," said he, "but—" His colleague stopped respectively. "You know that it is hardly possible to decide when tubercular disease first begins. In the present case, one can only suspect this trouble from the presence of such symptoms as indigestion, nervousness, and others. The question, therefore, stands thus. What is to be done, granting that a tubercular development is to be feared, in order to superinduce improved alimentation? But you know well that there is back of all some mental reason," said the family doctor with a cunning smile. "Of course," replied the celebrated doctor, looking at his watch again. "Excuse me, but do you know whether the bridge over the Yausa is finished yet, or whether one has to go around?" "It is finished." Then I have only 20 minutes left. We were just saying that the question remains thus: to improve the digestion and strengthen the nerves. The one cannot go without the other, and it is necessary to act on the two halves of the circle. But the journey abroad? I'm opposed to these journeys abroad. I beg you to follow my reasoning. If tubercular development has already set in, which we are not yet in a condition to prove, what good would travel do? The main thing is to discover a means of promoting good digestion." And the celebrated doctor began to develop his plan for a cure by means of soda water, the principal merits of which were, in his eyes, their absolutely inoffensive character. The family doctor listened with attention and respect. "But I should urge in favor of a journey abroad the change of her habits and the dissociations from the conditions that serve to recall unhappy thoughts. And finally, her mother wants her to go. "Ah, no, in that case let them go, provided always that those German quacks do not aggravate her disease. They must follow my prescriptions with the most absolute strictness. Let them travel." And again he looked at his watch. "It is time for me to go," and he started for the door. And the celebrated doctor assured the princess that he wished to see the invalid once more. It was probably through a sentiment of social propriety. "What, have another examination?" cried the princess with horror. "Oh, no, only a few minor points, princess." "Then come in, I beg of you." And the mother ushered the doctor into Kitty's little boudoir. The poor, emaciated girl was standing in the middle of the room with flushed cheeks and eyes brilliant with the excitement caused by the doctor's visit. When she saw them coming back, her eyes filled with tears, and she blushed still more crimson. Her illness and the remedies which she was obliged to endure seemed to her such ridiculous nonsense. What did these remedies mean? It was like gathering up the fragments of a broken vase in order to make it whole again. Her heart was broken, and could it be restored to health by pills and powders? But she did not dare to go against her mother's judgment, the more because she felt that she herself had been to blame. "Will you sit down, princess?" said the celebrated doctor. He sat down in front of her, felt her pulse, and with a smile began a series of wearisome questions. At first she replied to them, then suddenly arose impatiently. "Excuse me, doctor, but indeed this all leads to nothing. This is the third time you've asked me the same question." The celebrated doctor took no offense. "It is her nervous irritability," he remarked to the princess when Kitty had gone from the room. However, I was through. And the celebrated doctor explained the young girl's condition to her mother, treating her as a person of remarkable intelligence and giving her, finally, the most precise directions as to the method of drinking those mineral waters whose virtue, in his eyes, consisted in their uselessness. As to the question, "Is it best to take her abroad?" the celebrated doctor pondered deeply, and the result of his reflections was that they might travel on condition that they would not trust any quacks and would follow his prescriptions. After the doctor's departure, everybody felt as if some great good fortune had happened. The mother, in much better spirits, rejoined her daughter, and Kitty declared that she was better already. It often seemed necessary of late for her to hide what she really felt. "Truly, I feel better, mamma, but if you desire it, let us go," said she, and in her endeavor to show what interest she took in the journey, she began to speak of their preparations.